Astute viewers may recall our reports on the Amish community in Ontario, which is now facing the wrath of Justin Trudeau for one simple reason. They didn't download the ArriveCan app on their smartphones. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. And they have amassed nearly $300,000 in COVID fines to prove it. Could it be because the Amish are the last people on the planet who would ever use a smartphone? Maybe because they don't have smartphones, they don't even have landlines. For goodness sakes, they don't even use electricity. That was one of the requirements, of course, to cross the border to the U.S. during the pandemic, which many in this community had to do from time to time to visit their American Amish counterparts. But every time they did so, they were met with a $6,000 fine. And then the government started playing hardball by putting liens on their property. Unbelievable. But there is some news to report. Joining me now is Mark Joseph, the litigation director. What do you have to report in terms of the latest?
Well, thanks for having me, David. I do have some news to report. So far, we've acted for, I think, about 15 Amish clients who are facing these types of situations, and we've submitted our applications to the court to have these tickets reopened. So far, the courts have reopened all of our tickets, so that's good news.
Great.
So that puts us at the starting line. Then we have to seek disclosure from the Crown. We review disclosure, we get trial dates, and we proceed to trial. So we do have some trial dates now, beginning of early next year, I believe. And so there's some hope. There's a lot of work to do, but some of the liens are starting to come off, which is good.
Okay. And this business about putting liens on their property, which prevents them from getting loans, and they found out the hard way. It was Amish farmers going to their bank to get a loan and the banker going, "I'm so sorry, sir, I can't because the government of Canada has a lien on your property."
What we think happened here is there was a failure at some level in the court system. Notice wasn't provided to our clients for whatever reason, and therefore our clients didn't get their day in court. So it may just have been a bureaucratic oversight. It may have been something else. We're not sure. Now that these tickets are back in front of the court, we're hopeful that we can convince the Crown that there's no public interest in moving forward. But there's no guarantee. They might take this to trial. We do have trial dates for some of these tickets, which indicates that the Crown is prepared to go to trial. We do have a situation where one of our clients, she's a widow, her husband passed away, and then he was subsequently convicted in absentia, which is absolutely bizarre because, as everyone knows, you can't convict someone who has passed away. You don't have a person anymore.
What is the next step in order to get justice for the Amish?
Well, as I mentioned, we're prepared to go to court. We do have some court dates for our first two sets of clients, about 9 or 10 people. And then we have to review the disclosure, which we're doing now, to see how strong the case is. The Crown says is against our clients. And then we discuss things with the Crown and we see what they want to do with this. We're hopeful that, as I say, there's no public interest in taking these matters forward. But it's early next year. That's the timeline when we get into court before a JP and we plead our case, at least in some preliminary manner. But it's really up to the Crown. They are extremely grateful for the support they've received from the wider community. They do show their appreciation in the ways that they are able to. Obviously, they're not a community that has a lot of disposable income. That's why TDF stepped in with the help of our donors. So we take on the financial burden for carrying the case forward. But they know that the wider community supports them. And they're very grateful. Every time I do meet with them, they express that. So I feel I can pass that on.
Does that have any merit, that the fact that this is a scandalous app, and the fact that even if you had the technology, for the most part, it didn't work?
Well, I can't comment on the procurement process or contracting. and how that went down in the government. I mean, you have a better understanding than I do. I will say, in dealing with the ArriveCan, it was a strange legal regime, because the ArriveCan was the, what do they call it, specified electronic means that you had to use to provide your COVID-related information to the government when you cross the border. And that was done through these orders in council. This is kind of arcane. I'm not sure how much your viewers are going to know about this, but the point is, the government, instead of legislating by bringing a piece of legislation forward to the parliament, having it approved, they said, we don't have time, so we'll fire off these orders in council. And they're like quick little mini laws, and they published them in the Royal Gazette, which you could go online and find, but they were publishing these new laws under the ArriveCan about what you had to do when you cross the border, sometimes weekly. So they had these obscure little provisions in these orders in council that you had to decipher, some of which had exceptions to the rule about ArriveCan, and then they charged people under these orders in council. They wrote you the ticket, and then you had to figure out what provision you violated in these orders in council. So it was a mess. And going into, we've had trials on these tickets, and we had to explain the law to the JP because they couldn't figure it out. We had a hard time figuring it out. The Crown had a hard time figuring it out. So when you get into trial, this is the type of thing you're faced with. It was a mess of legal exceptions and rules that you had to pick through to figure out what your client was charged with. That's what I'll say with respect to the legal landscape.
The Amish, they're hardly the type who are going down to the bar wearing trouble on their shirts, to quote a Bruce Springsteen lyric. They just want to live their lives. They just want to farm. They're not trying to cause any aggravation for anyone. And for the Justin Trudeau Liberals to go on this jihad against them, it is despicable. In any event, we are following this closely because, well, the mainstream media, they can't be bothered. No story here, maybe because they're funded by the Justin Trudeau Liberals. But we're going to keep our eye on this, and we're going to do everything we can to bring the Amish justice. If you want to stand up to the tyranny of the Justin Trudeau Liberals, please go to AmishReports.com. That's AmishReports.com. If you're able to, please make a donation in our ongoing quest for justice. My thanks in advance.